Picture this. It's late at night, and you're lying next to someone who once felt like everything you were searching for. The room is quiet, but your mind isn't. Her back is turned toward you, not in anger, not in conflict, just distance. The kind of distance that doesn't argue, doesn't explain itself, and doesn't ask for permission. You stare at the ceiling, listening to your own breathing, feeling a weight in your chest you can't quite name yet. Nothing bad happened today. No fight, no harsh words, and yet, something feels wrong. You try to convince yourself it's just stress, just fatigue, just another phase. But deep down, there's a quiet voice telling you the truth. The kind of truth men usually ignore because it hurts too much to face early. The connection isn't gone suddenly, it's fading slowly, and the most dangerous losses in a man's life are the ones that happen silently. You remember how it used to feel, how her presence filled the room, how conversations flowed without effort, how being with her felt grounding, steady, real. And now you're here, lying inches away from someone who feels emotionally unreachable. You wonder when it changed. You replay moments. You search for mistakes. Because that's what men do. We assume responsibility, even for things that were never in our control. What you're experiencing isn't unique, it isn't weakness, and it isn't failure. It's a pattern that has broken more men than they'll ever admit. A pattern rooted not in romance, but in psychology, in biology, in the uncomfortable differences between how men and women bond, love, and detach. What I'm about to tell you won't flatter you, it won't comfort you, but it will give you clarity. And clarity, my friend, is the first step toward regaining control, not over someone else, but over yourself. You're lying beside someone who once felt like certainty. Not excitement, not chaos, certainty. And yet tonight, the space between your bodies feels wider than any distance you've ever crossed. Her back is turned. The room is quiet, too quiet. You stare at the ceiling, listening to your own breathing, and somewhere deep inside you feel a truth your mind isn't ready to accept yet. Nothing exploded, nothing ended loudly, but something essential has already slipped away. And that, my friend, is how it usually happens for men. Not through betrayal in the open, but through emotional disappearance in silence. Men fall in love through loyalty, through repetition, through choosing same woman again and again, even on days when the feeling isn't loud. A man's brain bonds through consistency, through sacrifice, through staying when leaving would be easier. Dopamine for a man isn't just excitement, it's duty, responsibility, being relied upon. That's why men remember beginnings, shared struggles, and promises long after the emotional temperature of the relationship has dropped. Loyalty becomes part of his identity. He doesn't just love her, he becomes loyal to the version of himself that chose her. Women fall in love through emotion, through internal movement, through feeling alive in the moment. Their attachment is powered by emotional stimulation, intensity, novelty, chemistry, feeling seen and felt. When those emotions are strong, love feels limitless. When they weaken, love doesn't argue or negotiate. It simply disengages. This isn't cruelty. It isn't calculation. It's a biological mechanism. An emotional system designed to respond to stimulation, not memory. Brain chemistry doesn't care about effort. It responds to feeling. That's why the shift is always subtle at first. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't even fully understand it. She just grows quieter. Her enthusiasm fades. Conversations feel shorter, flatter, less alive. You notice she laughs more easily at her phone than at your presence. You sense it in small moments. Delayed replies, absent eye contact, emotional distance disguised as being tired. These aren't random behaviors, they are signals, warning signs that emotional connection is weakening. And what do men do when they sense loss? They try harder, they give more, they become more patient, more understanding, more available, because loyalty tells them effort restores value, because men are taught that endurance is strength. You convince yourself that staying proves love, that consistency will reignite desire, that loyalty will eventually be recognized. But emotional attraction doesn't work like a reward system. It doesn't respond to sacrifice. It responds to stimulation. I've watched this pattern repeat itself endlessly. One man stayed faithful for years after intimacy disappeared, believing commitment was enough. Another kept forgiving emotional distance, convinced empathy would bring her back. A third slowly erased himself, his boundaries, his needs, his confidence. thinking love was something he had to earn through self-denial, and none of it worked. Because desire is not built on loyalty alone. Loyalty preserves bonds. It does not create emotional polarity. Modern culture quietly accelerates this collapse. Men are told to soften endlessly, to explain themselves, to adapt without limits. Women are encouraged to follow their feelings wherever they lead. Stability becomes boring. Emotional volatility is reframed as growth. And in that environment, men lose leverage by becoming predictable without presence, loyal without grounding, available without mystery. The emotional market shifts and no one warns them. Eventually, the collapse comes, not as a fight, not as drama, but as indifference. She doesn't argue anymore because she doesn't need to. In her emotional world, the ending already happened. When she finally leaves, emotionally or physically, she doesn't look back because she processed the loss long before you realized it was happening. And you're left alone, replaying memories, trying to locate the exact moment loyalty stopped being enough. Here's the bitter truth most men resist. Loyalty without self-respect becomes invisible. Consistency without emotional grounding loses value. Love without boundaries destroys the one who gives it. This isn't about blaming women. It's about understanding reality instead of romantic myths. About seeing the emotional battlefield clearly instead of walking into it blind. The solution isn't anger. It isn't resentment. And it isn't chasing validation. The solution is awakening. A man regains power the moment he stops needing to be chosen. When he builds a life rooted in purpose, direction, and inner stillness. When loyalty becomes a gift he offers, not a sacrifice that empties him. When he understands that being emotionally grounded is more attractive than being endlessly accommodating. When a man no longer fears being alone, he stops begging emotionally. He stops negotiating his worth. He becomes calm, centered, solid. And paradoxically, that is when everything changes. Not because he chased love harder, but because he stopped abandoning himself for it. Awareness hurts. It always does. But ignorance costs far more. Stand firm, choose clarity, and never confuse loyalty with self-erasure again. Before you close this video, take a moment and sit with what you felt, not what you agreed with, not what you disagreed with, but what resonated. Because if something here touched you, it's not by accident. It means you've lived parts of this story. It means you've been loyal in a world that rarely rewards it properly. Understand this clearly. Loyalty is not weakness. Commitment is not foolish. Loving deeply is not a mistake. The mistake is giving those things without boundaries, without self-respect, without grounding yourself in who you are. Strength is not measured by how much pain you endure in silence. Strength is measured by how clearly you see reality and how calmly you respond to it. You don't need to become bitter. You don't need to hate women. You don't need to close your heart. What you need is clarity. Clarity about how attraction works. Clarity about your own value. Clarity about the difference between loving someone and losing yourself for them. When you stop chasing emotional validation, when you stop negotiating your worth, something shifts inside you. You become steadier, quieter, harder to shake. Awakening feels lonely at first. Growth always does. When you stop living for approval, fewer people understand you, but the right ones respect you. Build your life. Build your discipline. Build your inner stillness. Let loyalty be something you offer from strength, not something you use to beg for love. And remember this, you were never meant to abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. The moment you choose clarity over illusion, you step into real power. Walk forward without anger, without resentment, with calm certainty.